Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. Tonight, we have stories making headlines around the state. First off, how Michigan lawmakers are lining up in the debate over strikes in Syria and why national attention is focused on Grand Rapids. Plus, a Michigan State University professor caught on tape bashing Republicans this week, and he's yanked from class. Do you agree? Also tonight, the reindeer rancher turned congressman has some competition for his seat. We'll also take a look at election results from Detroit's mayoral primary and the fact that ballots are being counted again. And you won't believe what Flint Congressman Dan Kildee does on the Colbert Report. We will show it to you. But we do start tonight with a debate around the country over military action against Syria's regime for using chemical weapons on its people. Lawmakers in Michigan are not in agreement, and a very vocal opposition to the president is Congressman Justin Amash from Grand Rapids. Let's start right there with our contributors tonight, Nolan Finley, the editorial page editor of the Detroit News, and Stephen Henderson, the editorial page editor of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Obviously, a lot of debate in Washington is now around the country. Congressmen they're going back to their home districts and they're talking to their constituents. A lot of attention being paid to Grand Rapids and Justin Amash.
Well, in terms of how people are lining up on this debate, Justin Amash and the Libertarian branch that he represents are about the only people with any honesty and integrity in this thing, because they're consistent. They always vote no, and they're going to vote no again. It's interesting to see how the others in Congress are lining up based on whether they want to preserve Barack Obama's presidency or destroy his presidency. The debate doesn't seem to have anything to do with the principle of whether we should be bombing Syria to deter or punish it for using chemical weapons. It's all about political calculations. I'm not sure that's a way to do this.
So is he really the only one that has honesty and integrity in this whole debate right now?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think you can look at some other members of Congress who take, a principled approach to this stuff and say, look, if the evidence is there and we can try to put together a multinational coalition, then they'll go along. I mean, but there are still, of course, a lot of people playing politics with this, and that's, that's the political branch. I mean, that's why we have Congress in this country. You would hope that they would make national security decisions based on national security, but the reason that that we have Article 2 of the Constitution, which sets up a very direct democratic legislature, is so that people can vent these kind of things. And if you look at what the American people are saying about this, there's very little support right now for it, and I think people are waiting to be more convinced that this is the right thing to do.
I guess what's going to
I mean, when you talk about the people who opposed George Bush for doing pretty much the same thing, and those who supported George Bush for doing this, are now in reverse roles based on their party alignment.
There's a lot of that.
We've been sitting here now for days telling Bashar Assad what we're not going to do to him. We're not going to do this. He must be laughing his head off at the disarray he's caused in Washington. If you were going to strike, the strike should have been immediate and heavy, and it shouldn't have come with all this advanced warning. I'm not sure there's going to be anything left to bomb.
Well, you look for the timing of it.
We took 8 months in the run-up to the Iraq War in 2003 because we had the same debate. I mean, to some degree.
Could you argue, though, that the Iraq War is very different from what they're talking about the strikes in Syria? You're talking about a total ground advancement versus some kind of military airstrike.
They were preparing for war then.
I think we might be preparing for war now. I don't think. I mean,
that's
personally,
not what John Kerry is
that's
saying.
what people are trying to pull back from. But I think there's not much point of going in there and dropping a couple bombs and then walking away. If you're going to go in, I think you have to be mindful of a change that will prevent this from happening in the future.
And
that means removing Assad. I don't see how you should stop.
But do you really think even that's going to change? That this is possibly something that a civil war that's going to be continuing on for the next 15 to 20 years?
You can make a difference if we go in there and take out Assad's air capability. It gives the rebels a much greater chance of prevailing here. I don't think anybody wants to see us involved in another protracted ground war. But if they do this strategically, in a way that helps the rebels, but then then when it's over, you've got the rebels, and I'm not sure that's a great.
McCain has been very strident this week about the rebels in the South, who are the strongest in the country, are not as radical as people are portraying them to be. That it's up in the north where you've got this sort of ragtag band of Al Qaeda and all kinds of other stuff, that you have problems. I mean, I think that the president's got to do a better job, and John Kerry's got to do a better job of really articulating exactly what's going on and exactly what our role can be in again, moving the ball.
Almost uncertain whether this is what they want to do. I mean, it's like he's coughed it up to Congress and saying, well, you know, give us a vote. I'm not seeing a whole lot of leadership.
So how does the
House.
Michigan delegation line up right now in terms of supporting the president?
They're sort of all over the place.
Basically by party line,
Yeah.
other than Mike Rogers is supporting the strike. I think all the other Republicans are either undecided or, opposed. I think on the Democrats, most of them have lined up behind the president. Nobody can seem to find John Conyers to ask him. But
That's got to be a problem. I mean,
He'll vote the right way.
So, all right,
he's not going to vote for it.
okay, so let me ask you this. So if the president does not get congressional approval for this, what are his options?
He doesn't have any, I don't think. You can't ask Congress for this. And he said last week, or the White House said last week, that, well, he could go anyway. That would be an absolute disaster. I mean, he's in the same place then that the British Prime Minister is. If you ask the legislative branch for its consent, and then they don't give it, you can't.
And then you can't just go, I'm just going to do something
he's
anyway.
He's going to get congressional approval. The question is approval for what, right? That's where this is all going to play out. But you've got leadership on both sides in the Capitol now saying, look, we got to do something. So all these people who are sort of saying, well, I'm not sure, they just need to be convinced. In the end, he will get a vote to authorize something, and I think again,
I'm not sure he'll get that out of the House. I mean, I think he'll get it in the Senate. The House is still iffy, and I'm not sure he should be asking for consent for every little specific. He shouldn't have to spell out every specific thing he's going to do. That's ludicrous. He should be getting approval for a response, but he shouldn't have to say, "And we're going to bomb here, here, but not here and here." I mean, it's just
and it's
useless.
the conditions, right? Who are you going to go with, right? Are we going to try to get Arab support or help for this? Are we going to try to get other international help for it? I mean, that strengthens the case, I think.
What's the chance of that? I mean, already
I think there's high
most
chance.
of the people who have been with us in previous situations like this have said they're not in.
They're kind of back
Most
up.
notably Britain.
They'll change their minds once we get congressional.
All right, well, the Senate will take up this next week for a vote, and we'll be watching that.